Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. I am Pat, I am with you, and it is good to be with you. Now, before you all disappear, because your favourite beardie's not here, Chewy's doing something at work until about now-ish, and we've got a pre-recorded interview. So we're going to play the pre-recorded interview first, and then by the end of that, the lovely Chewy will, I assume, be joining us, unless his work thing involves one or two drinks, and then maybe not. No. Anyway, hey team, how are you all? Yeah, as I said, a very interesting pre-recorded interview that if you're a patron, you may have already seen, and if you're not, you're going to get to see very, very shortly. Yeah, so that's what's going to happen. And then we're going to talk a little bit about reality check radio, getting an actual reality check today. Really, really interesting, the numbers. I've been putting the numbers up on Twitter today. I don't know if you've seen them anywhere else or if you've seen my Twitter feed, but we'll talk about this when Chewy gets here. But I understand through very, very good sources, people who are at the fundraising events, that's how good the sources were, that RCR got themselves about $5 million. They got themselves about $5 million to set this up, and they've lasted about 13 months. Now, if they've lasted 13 months on $5 million, are you ready for this? That means they've burnt through $85,000 a day. Actually, I'm going to check that, because even saying that out loud sounds so wrong to me. So wrong. But that doesn't mean just salaries and stuff. Let's 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divided by 13. That'd be 13 months. Yeah, $384,000. It's going to be per week, isn't it? Divided by 4.3. Okay, $85,000 a week, not a day. So I was wrong. I thought it sounded a bit off. $85,000 a week, over $300,000 a month to burn through that $5 million. And that doesn't include, of course, the supporters and their kind of version of patrons that have joined on as well. So $5 million appears to be gone, and they appear to be, it feels like they are holding their audience to ransom, like they've got the proverbial knife to the throat saying, if you don't pay up, then we're not going to come back. It really does feel particularly odd. So we'll have a look at that as we go through the evening. And also, I'm a polite person. I mean, some of you may laugh when I say that, but I am a polite person, and I don't like speaking negatively about people like in a derogatory sort of a way. But how do I say? Because everyone always tells us such and such a smart person, they're a smart person, such and such are a smart person. If you saw Brook van Velden's conversation with Jack Tame in the weekend, how can I say this politely? Let me put it this way. If you saw it, you will not be left with the opinion that she is a smart individual. You will, in fact, be left with the opinion that she is the opposite, as thick as two short planks. There were moments in the conversation with Jack Tame where she didn't even understand the question. There was moments in the interview where she had to thank Jack Tame for spelling out what the question was that he just asked. It was utterly shocking. You guys know that if you follow along with that, I wrote notes. That whole page there, see, I've started to cross things out there and there. I've had to cross things out because there were so many notes I took from that interview. We could have done a full 60 minutes just on that interview. So I've had to take some of the things I would have talked to you about out, including workplace safety, a whole bunch about, we're not talking about that at all tonight. You'd have to go and watch the interview, but it was unfathomable, the level of idiocy, in my opinion. That is my honest held belief. Okay, so we'll get on to that as well. And coming up next is our conversation, our pre-recorded conversation around trust in the media. Before we do that, let's just say a huge thanks to all of our lovely patrons. And I think there might be one or two new ones that are quite on our billboard. We've had a busy day. So thank you so much for being a part of what we do. You guys help us make this and help us pay the odd bill here and there that comes up, pays for the software that you're watching us through and for the internet. And when a computer goes down, it does the business to help pay for the new part that we need, etc., etc., etc. And if you've always been a bit of a lurker and you've considered maybe supporting us in a patron's way, it's funny because you wait till you hear what RCR does, the pressure they put on their patrons, their customers, for giving them money. It's unfathomable. $85,000 a week. So that would imply to me that they need to raise about, what's that going to be, like about $12,000 a day to keep on going. And remember, that's not just salaries. That's going to be what they pay for their billboards and all that kind of stuff as well. But man, I put a tweet out today that said, if we had the money that RCR raised to get this thing going, we could have 4 to 5 full-time staff, put out hundreds of pieces of content a month, which we're sort of already doing, but more so. And we could go for 10 years without having to raise another cent. Like we could work for 10 years with 4 or 5 full-time workers on the money that they had, putting more content out without any Patreon money, without any advertising money, without any YouTube money, without any merch money. If we had the budget that they raised, we could do this full-time for people for 10 years. That's the kind of money they had. And it's really interesting that they often talk about the mainstream media and how bad it is. They spend money like the mainstream media spends money. And because they have done that, they're not coming back. They're not going to raise enough money to cover $12,000 a day. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, if you want to be a part of what we're doing and you want to be in on the Patreon, this is our page, and as you can see there, this is the conversation with Dr. Greg Treadwell, the conversation I'm going to play for you very, very shortly. If you're a patron, you've had a chance to see it early, and some people have seen it and commented on it as well. So if that's your vibe, we'll do a meetup this week as well. If that's your vibe and you've always thought, well, I've been watching for a while, I'm a lurker, but I want to be a bit more involved with what these guys are doing, then it's patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Right, we have had a recent release, the latest version of the Trust in News in Aotearoa, the 2024 version has been released. It found some interesting things. In 2023, general trust in the news declined from 45 to 42%, continuing a downward trend that was already evident in 2020 when the survey was first conducted. However, in 2023, the trust in news people consumed themselves increased from 52 to 53%. So in other words, if you're in your echo chamber, you trust it more. We get that. Lots of other bits and bobs that are going through here as well. I think it says here, RNZ, the Otago Daily Times and TVNZ were equally regarded as the most trusted news brands in 2022. So for all that bullshit out there about, TVNZ and paid off journalists, they're still the most trusted. RNZ and TVNZ. So the two public broadcasters are still the most trusted, along with the Otago Daily Times. Yeah. RNZ was the most trusted news brand, followed by the other two. In 2023, the top 3 were followed by interest.co.nz, NBR, Newshub, and Newsroom. Interesting. So one of those places that's shutting down was one of the top 6 or 7 most trusted news being Newshub. Although we do find out tomorrow, I think, what is the final outcome for Newshub as well. Okay, so Dr. Greg Treadwell has been a reporter, a photographer, a newspaper editor before he joined Auckland University of Technology as a journalist lecturer in 2005. He completed a PhD on the loss of freedom of information experienced by public interest journalists in Aotearoa, New Zealand. He held the position of head of journalism in the School of Communication Studies from 2020 to 2022. He's now a senior lecturer at AUT, and he's involved with this survey every year as well in the group that do that. Let's have a little bit of time, you and me together, us just the two of us together, you and me together, as we wait for Chewy to come along and have a chat with Dr. Greg Treadwell on trust in New Zealand media and how it's declining rapidly. Welcome to the show, a senior lecturer in journalism at AUT, also researcher for the Journalism, Media and Democracy Group. This is Greg Treadwell. Greg, thank you for joining us again.
Kia ora, Pat. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, lovely to be back with you. Now, some events happened today which we haven't talked about prepping for, to do with an independent, I don't know if you've heard of this, independent radio, quote unquote, radio station. I want to ask you about that shortly, because I think that ties in somewhat to the research that's come out from your group. There they are there, the JMND, who has been doing for 5 years.
We call it JMAD.
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 And for 5 years you've been doing about public trust in the media. All these results came out yesterday. I'm sure BHN featured right at the top for trust. I haven't read it myself yet, but I'm sure it's right near the top. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not sure we surveyed people about BHN, but perhaps next year we do. I think the trust is self-evident, Pat. I really do.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's right. You look after those guys where it's not self-evident. We're fine. Tell us about this year's results, because there's some significant enough changes to be seen in the research, isn't there?
Yeah. For 5 years, we've been doing these trust levels. It's benchmarked against international research by Reuters at the University of Oxford. So we use the same questions with their permission so that we can compare our results internationally, and they can have some New Zealand results. They don't do New Zealand. So that's kind of what started off the whole thing in terms of how we do it. We ask people if they trust the news, and we ask people, well, we ask them quite a lot these days, to be honest, but the two key issues here are, do you trust the news in general, and do you trust the news that you consume personally? Both those levels have been declining over 5 years, as is kind of common and similar to other, if you want, Western countries, although not all Western countries are experiencing the same decline. But certainly New Zealanders, and 5 years ago, we were kind of pleased with ourselves because, we were higher than Australia. That's so important to us, blah, blah, blah. But 5 years later, we're falling faster than most comparable countries. And we're having been at the kind of top of the pack, we're now at the bottom of the pack. And the only significant people who trust the news less than us are the UK and the US. That might speak to the kind of influences we are getting through social media and so on.
It's interesting that people don't trust the media that they consume, because surely you could choose the media that you trust and then consume it. But if people are answering in the affirmative that they do not trust the media that they're choosing to consume, I can't quite get my head around that.
I know. Yeah, I get that too. So if the news that you choose to consume doesn't really mean you trust it, but you feel you need to read something. What we also ask is, are you prepared to pay for news? Because that's an indicator of trust. Nobody's going to pay for something that's just a waste of their time. New Zealanders are increasingly strong about paying for news. Maybe they don't have so much choice around paywalls that have come in on most major websites now, but when they do, for example, make a contribution to a website, every news site is begging for money, basically, and Kiwis are actually quite strong in paying for their news increasingly. And another really interesting result is that the interest in news is not declining. 74% of New Zealanders say they're interested in the news, and many of those are very interested. It's kind of weird. We're interested in the news, but we don't trust it. And so that's sort of anomalous in a way, but it's, it means we care about democracy, but we don't think it's going right.
Does it show in the research, or if it doesn't, do you have an opinion as to why the trust in media is declining, as opposed to the research saying it's just declining?
That's what we're doing at the moment. We're working. We've kind of done the what, and now we're looking at the why. We asked people to, align with certain things in the survey. So, are you in agreement or strong agreement with the following statement, etc. Typical survey stuff. But we also asked if they wanted to offer their own views on why they didn't trust the news. And one of the big issues is not just trust, but news avoidance. So news avoidance is growing fast in New Zealand. It's a strange thing, but we're very interested in the news, but we're some of the world's strongest news avoiders. News avoidance isn't, I always avoid it, never watch the news or listen. It's not that. It's, I find myself consciously at various times, avoiding the news. So the reasons that have come through already, I've analysed them. We've parked them into what I think of as camps. There's quite a bit of cross, shared ownership of these camps. But the two huge ones are, I avoid the news because it's just overwhelmingly negative, and it's really bad for my mental health. So Mary Mulilati, who's my co-author in this research, in fact, the lead author, she and I are both ex-journalists. So we sort of know newsroom culture as well as academic research, and we teach journalism at AUT. So we know, as many journalists do, that there's long, ever since we were cub reporters, there has been an understanding in newsrooms that journalists aren't well trusted by the public. But this has gone further than that. Not trusted, and that the news is negative. So people have always complained about the news being negative. That's not new. But what is new, and journalists' response to that would always be, well, we have limited space and time. You don't want us to tell fluffy stories about puppies. You need to know what's going wrong in the world. That's why we're here, right? That's what journalism's about. So we always just took the criticisms of negativity on the chin and sort of explained it away as part of the job. And of course, we had a much more captured audience then. So whether it was negative or not, people still watched the news. But now, one, they don't have to watch the news so much because there's so much other information available. And two, they are now saying that it's not just negative, it's overwhelmingly negative, and it's really affecting my mental health. Maybe part of that is a better understanding of mental health now. I don't know. But,
because that might be a change in society as to how people are looking after themselves.
More consciousness of it. But I would suggest the world is getting more negative, and the news is more negative, even than it used to be. And people are feeling overwhelmed by that and switching off.
So answer me this.
The other big camp is it's biased. The news is biased now. And again, the old newsroom way of dealing with that was if both sides of an issue are a bit pissed off with you, then you probably got it right. And that's an old newsroom trope, but it isn't both sides now. Unfortunately, there's a massive growing belief that the media has swung far to the left. Whether it has or not is a different thing. I like to reiterate here that we're talking about perceptions, and that these surveys are a measure of public opinion, not social reality. But public opinion is strongly that the media is biased to the left, and they're sick, and people are sick of being preached at, and there's a lot of woke accusations. I mean, post-pandemic, this might not be very surprising to your audience, but it is significant and important.
Yeah. It's interesting because the obvious follow-up question from the research that you've done, which is people's perception of the media being untrustworthy, is the media untrustworthy? So do we find that the media is accurate and fair? Is there any research that you've been involved with or looked into to see if the people's perceptions, which you mentioned before, are actually reality or not?
Given the nature of bias, that is very hard to do. Because if you accuse something of being biased, it's often about where you're coming from. So
they don't agree with me. They don't agree with me, so they're biased. But when they do agree with me, they're speaking the truth.
Absolutely. And this is why, we're quite careful to underscore that this research is about people's perceptions, not the reality of the media. No, there's no current measures to say the New Zealand media has or hasn't swung away to the left. But there is quite a bit of anecdotal and some research to show that post-pandemic public opinion is much more mistrusting of social institutions generally. And so some of the research around the world around news trust, and as I said before, there are many countries going through this. Some of the research around news trust shows some connection to the general fall in trust in government, police, and when you ask some people, the media is just part of the establishment. And there is a mainstream media that does appear in a Chomsky type of way to manufacture consent for the social order, if you like. But journalists would say we're not really here to entirely disrupt the social order. That's for revolutionaries. We're here actually just to tell you what's going right or wrong within the framing of mainstream society. So, I think the two huge reasons for news avoidance are a perception of bias and an understanding that the news is making people feel pretty bloody unwell.
And that's why I think independent media has a bit of a leg up. I mean, we just tell people where we sit politically. We don't hide it. We say this is who we are. This is where we vote. We call balls and strikes. So if either side is doing good or bad, we'll say it. But so you guys know, this is where we sit. And you talked before about, every website's asking for money everywhere. Just today, and this is the bit we hadn't necessarily prepped for, just today, we hear that Reality Check Radio, and I use the word both Reality Check and radio with speech marks around it, are off air.
Yep.
Because they don't have the funds. They got $5 million in funding about 13, 14 months ago. That's all gone. They're off air, and they've got a video up with Peter Williams telling everybody how this is the only place that can speak the truth. And we need your money. We need your money now. There's no chance they're going to stick around. There's no chance they're going to get funding unless they find themselves a bunker holder somewhere in Wanaka that wants to fight back against vaccine mandates, which don't exist anywhere ever right now. Because if you work out $5 million to disappear in 12 months, that's how much it costs per day. They're not gonna raise that. I'm interested in any thoughts around trust and independent media, and also specifically, we've been heard for such a long time, go woke, go broke, but there's this one that's been telling us go woke, go broke, and they're the ones that have gone broke. On that exacting video, they show a clip of a whole bunch of people holding up some of their billboards, and one of them says mainstream media rest in peace after they're dead, and mainstream media continues to live on. So be interested to get any of your pretty much off the cuff comments about what's happened today with Reality Check, and where does independent media fit in this whole thing?
I did see that story. I think the Herald were running it, but it was on premium, so I don't know if everybody's seen it. But I haven't seen the video, but I did read a description of it. It's really hard for me to sort of include Reality Check Radio in the broader media scheme, because to be fair, they likely, like you guys, perhaps they put it out there where they stand, and they certainly do in terms of mainstream media and other sort of mainstream issues. It's for me, this is identity media, I guess.
But as you're thinking, I disagree with you. They don't put out where they stand. Sean Plunkett continually goes on about how he's balanced. They don't. They actually don't. They don't do what we do.
To be fair, the Plunkett is on the platform, not Reality Check.
No, but I'm saying that's another one in that camp. They don't do that. Yep. They don't say I vote ACT. They don't.
No, okay, fair. Look, I totally accept that. I guess I'm very conscious of where they come from, having had some dealings with them in the past that led to a series of death threats against me. So I'm not unaware of how it works on that side of things. But we also do a media ownership report at JMAT each year, and they're now in there, largely around how ownership and motivation is not clear. So you're right at that level. I think trust. So let's just look back at the mainstream for a moment, so that we can maybe get a little context for the independents. And independent is a nice broad term. I mean, I would include in independent things like newsroom, spin-off, those sort of things. So independent they may be independent media. I'm not saying they're not, but I wouldn't compare them to you guys. I wouldn't compare them to Newsroom or the spin-off in terms of their journalism. They're not accountable to the New Zealand Media Council. There's all sorts of reasons why they're out there on the limb. But if we just look at the mainstream for the moment, trust is around a relationship, I think. And I think that the news organizations, and that's most in New Zealand now, whose trust levels are falling pretty rapidly, have lost a relationship with an audience. And I think Reality Check Radio probably has quite good trust from its audience, because they're actually building on that relationship all the time. The ODT is the most trusted news organization in New Zealand in our report, but we don't cover everything. But we have a list of 10 or 15 news organizations, and we ask people, if you read this one, and if you don't read it, please don't answer it. But if you read it, what do you think about this news organization? And the ODT is the most trusted. It's just sort of knocked Radio New Zealand off its perch. I can send you the link. There's a link at the bottom of there. You can actually get the report itself. But the ODT is the most trusted. And I started my journalism career many years ago at the ODT. And I think about, what would it be that makes the ODT different? And we actually have the editor up in the at AUT tomorrow as part of a panel discussion to discuss this. But
Nice.
my initial thoughts around trust is a relationship, and trust in a social scientific way is a relationship between the trustor and the trustee, and it's based on future promised outcomes and so on. So what goes on in Dunedin that doesn't go on in Auckland? I mean, you go to the rugby stadium there, and the Otago Daily Times is right across the top of the stand. There's a sense of ownership by the community, and as you go further down in size, of course, down to community newspapers and stuff, my own community newspaper where I used to work actually is still incredibly well trusted. It's never put a story for free on the internet. That might be something to do with it.
Yeah.
But trust is about a relationship, and maybe some of those independent ones that I might not think of as journalism have actually built quite a strong, trusting relationship with their audience, even though I think they're being trusted for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, no, look, that makes a lot of sense, because I would think about what we do in a very, very, very small way. And I think that's exactly what the people who are watching this right now will do. They say they trust us. We have a community. We actually are a very small community, and we see the same people in our chat many of the nights, and we hear from the same people in our emails. And so it's a little village. So I get that. And so the question therefore for mainstream media, to wrap this whole thing up, is how do they build relationship back with their audience? And that's how they'll start to get trusted again.
So I've got some quite strong views on this, and I think that what's missing is that sense. Even though journalists that I know go to work every day to do their best work they can for the wider New Zealand community, but from the audience point of view, there's been the audience isn't entirely sure about that anymore. There's things like corporate interests and commercial interests, and whether the accusations of bias are right. And certainly the Public Interest Journalism Fund might have helped a few journalism organizations get through the pandemic, but it created a lot of mistrust out in the community, because if you're paid by the government, you're in the pocket of the government, people think. So there's sort of those issues that are hard to get through. But I think to rebuild trust, it's about showing the audience that you're on their side. And I think, and clearly that's what Big Hairy News is, and that's why people trust you. So I think news organizations have to get back out there. They have to, well, first of all, they have to distinguish their content from the morass of rubbish on the internet. It's got to look like news, and at the moment it doesn't. It's just a scroll in the Facebook feed. And whereas, once upon a time, all the opinion in a newspaper was contained on the editorial pages, people don't trust opinion. People are telling us that the New Zealand media is far too opinionated. And whether there's a bit of opinion sneaking into news stories or not, I think the bigger issue is that people just don't know how to distinguish between news and other content. So we've got to make news look like news. We've got to promote ourselves as news organizations so much more. We've got to have something on our website that says, hey, this month we held the Minister of Health to account. We got funding recognized as needed in a certain part of the impoverished community. Next month we hope to do this and hold Te Whatu Ora to account over these issues. People don't understand why journalists do what they do. And I think too many people just think journalists go to work and write whatever the hell they want. And it's just not like that. So those are the things that I think they can start to do. There was a sort of a move a few years ago that transparency was the solution, but it's only part of it. Yes, you have to be transparent about how you got your stories and where you got them from, and give people these days links to the provenance of documents and stuff like that. But you have to actually connect with your audience on a human level and convince them you're on their side. And that, I think, is the way to start rebuilding trust.
Really interesting. Hey, Greg, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, pleasure.
It's always good to get your perspective on things. It's Greg Treadwell from JMAD. And if you want to find out more about JMAD, jmadresearch.com, if my old man eyes are reading that very small print quite well, and to read the information yourself. And yeah, it's an interesting thought to think about. People will trust the media outlet if they have a relationship with them. That resonates with me. So thank you for those insights.
You're very welcome, and thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Well, alrighty then. I think we've got a little furry person in the green room as well. Maybe we should bring him in. You can bring yourself in. There he goes. G'day.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
We had lots of viewers, and then when they saw it was just my face, it went to negative 400. But then I told them it was coming back in, and they promised to come out.
I'm back now.
Nice, man. Hey, you actually popped in quite near the start of that conversation. So I did the conversation. Everyone's seen the conversation. Got any thoughts on it?
I think it's a really interesting discussion. A bit like I've noticed a huge nosedive in, I guess, behavior around news, people's perception of news. And I think it's a direct consequence of the pandemic. The pandemic broke people, man. Like too much internet. And I said something very briefly in the chat now about Facebook. There is an enormous amount of people that perhaps dipped their toes in the internet, and then the pandemic forced the issue. To stay connected with people, you had to be on Facebook, you had to be on WhatsApp, you had to be internet connected in some way. And there's an enormous amount of people that are on the internet that lack the critical thinking skills to look at the angles. They take what I would consider the wrong things at face value, and then take more legitimate news sources with a huge grain of salt that they don't give to these other things. I mean, I'm pouring one out for my homies at Reality Check Radio. Let me tell you, the one that I'm pouring out for them is, of course, a gallon of unfiltered piss that I've kept aside for just this very occasion. Those guys and people like them have poured just toxic waste into the discussion space. It's just preyed on people, and I think quite broken people. These people are reaching out and looking for opinions and looking for news, and they're just grasping the wrong things. And I honestly don't know how to fix that. I think legacy media has some real challenges ahead. People are going, well, newspapers and TV shows have been able to survive for decades. The whole thing has changed. Advertising dollars have disappeared because if you want any cut through on your advertising, you pour money into Facebook now. You don't pour it into the local paper. You don't put it into television advertising, radio advertising. So these guys have to reinvent themselves to stay alive. And I don't think they've grasped it yet.
I think what I learned from that conversation with Greg is what we have here, and not to educate the mainstream media, but it seems that if you have a community, if you have a relationship with your audience, then they trust you. So for whatever reason, whether it's right or wrong, and I suggest perhaps wrong, to do with the disinformation dozen and COVID and the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff, there's been a separation between some mainstream media outlets and their constituents and their audience, and they've lost relationship with them. And a huge piece of that pie is going to be exactly what you said. But I think there's possibly another side of it, which is the way that mainstream media organizes themselves these days is far more corporate and finance first. Like people say it's left wing, it's right wing. No. It's all about the green, as they would say in America. It's not left focused or right focused, it's profit focused. And that could also be something that the media companies are doing, which is severed their relationship with their audience. And it just speaks to me, none of them are listening right now, don't listen to mainstream media, that the more places like us grow relationship, are in relationship with the people who consume us, the more we will grow. And you've just been talking about Unreality Check Radio. They have relationship with their audience, but they've actually set themselves up as a mainstream media company in the way they spend. We've talked about this a dozen times, Chewy. We walk into MediaWorks' front office and they've got a $100,000, $200,000 foyer. Reality Check Radio. They've been flooding through my Twitter feed today. The billboards in fucking Newmarket in Auckland, a full-size billboard. So they are spending like a mainstream media outlet which means they probably have to make decisions which separate them from that relationship. Now, mainstream media does need to do that, because if you are News Hub and you've got whatever it is, 300 staff, obviously you've got to make money to pay that staff. But when that gets elevated above the relationship with our audience, you lose them. I reckon that's what it is.
Yeah.
So that's just a way of me saying we love you guys watching. Mwah. We're our bestest friends.
Like, as far as reality check radio go, I would love to see how much they spent on signage.
Yeah.
Just signage. They had a very slick presentation. That costs money. So you talked earlier about how much money, we've had information about how much people were donating to them and their funding rounds and that sort of stuff. They burned through that money like it was going out of fashion.
Well, you know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. Those, I think it's 3 women from Voices for Fuckwits, incredibly good at fundraising, but it seems they had no one who was good at organizing a media company. Because the decisions they were making, spending tens of thousands, let's be honest, on billboards and Newmarket and stuff, weren't the decisions they were making and weren't going to give them the kickback for them to then drive in hundreds of thousands of advertising. If you put $10,000 into marketing, you want to see a return on that. So my premise, right, I suggest that they have had some very clever, very slick, very smart fundraisers and a bunch of fucking morons when it comes to how to run a media company. That's what I would guess.
Is their website up for sale yet?
I don't know. Why do you want to buy it? We can take we could take the speech marks off.
We can have a sneaky rebrand.
So this is where it started today for me. This is a thumbnail. This was on their video. And I just thought how ironic that on the video, and I'll show you a couple of parts from the video as we go through, one of the images they showed was people on a beach holding up "Rest in Peace, Mainstream Media." I just thought that was kind of ironic how mainstream media is still standing. And the irony went on. There's a plane pulling a thing behind it, Reality Check Radio, RIP woke media. Because, Chewy, if you go woke, you go broke. So that's what they believe. So do we now have to assume that Reality Check Radio is woke? We've been asking this all what is woke? What does it mean to be woke? Well, they've gone broke. Maybe it's them. Maybe that's what it means. I have a few more for you. Yeah, here we go. Geez, the whole woke, go broke, and all the RIP mainstream media stuff isn't aged that well, has it? RCR, NZ. And that's where I made a mistake here, but we read it's $85,000 a week to burn through 5 million. That doesn't even include any new money they've got put in by their supporters. And Chewy, I've already pointed this out, but I'll say it again because this might be a clip tomorrow. If BHN had the funding that they had, we could run for 10 years with 4 full-time staff. That's what we could do with that money. And then another one here. Part of their grift video to support the $85,000 a week habit, made a mistake, is revealing they got 350,000 people listening to RCR in 13 months. That's terrible. Those numbers are terrible. We get 500,000 unique viewers to just one of our platforms, one of our video platforms every 2 months. So to say we got 350,000 listeners in a year. Okay, so how many people live in New Zealand? 5 million. That means every single day you have the opportunity for 5 million people. And do 5 million the next day and 5 million the next day. So over 365 days, you've got the possibility of 5 million people times 365. And they've gone, guys, we reached 350,000 people. It's that, that again says to me that they've had fundraisers, but they haven't had media people. They've had people who could they've had broadcasters. That's different. Peter Williams is a broadcaster, but it seems they've had no one behind the scenes who knows media. And I'm not saying this like, the poor people. In fact, I'll be honest. I think the last time this came up about News Hub, I said it's always sad when people lose their jobs. I found myself being a bit hypocritical today, and I'll mea culpa with that. I just didn't feel that sad about this group of people losing their jobs. And I, to be honest, I had to check myself because these people will still have families and they'll still have mortgages and they'll still have that. But I guess I came back to how much harm this kind of rhetoric is doing this country. And that's what I kind of came back to. So yeah, what we'll do though, Chewy, is we'll play a couple of bits from the video, and I know this might annoy some people, but because I don't listen to it. Right? I know we've done a piece on Chantal here from there and other bits and pieces, but I don't listen to it. But the one or two times I have tuned in to see what's going on, they seem to have been still talking about lockdowns, mandates, vaccines. Like honestly, what has it been, like 9 years since that happened? That's what the convers, like each time I tuned in. So I just wanted to play a couple of minutes of this video and just give you a sense of the topics that both RCR think are important and some of their supporters, because there's some people in these videos as well. So unfortunately, I feel that Peter Williams has dirtified Central Otago a bit for us, walking around Queenstown there. But, you know, I guess he's allowed to be there.
Look at that. Look at that colour grading.
It's a good video. No, this is it. So they can.
This is what I mean. They spend money.
Yeah.
They're quite happy to spend the money.
Yeah. No. The video was incredibly professional. So let's just have a look at a couple of minutes from this, and this is about what the people are actually fearful about.
Do you remember when places like this were all empty? It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, we were there 2 years ago. It's a lot fucking easier getting around than it was this weekend, trust me.
Was it when they locked us in our homes and closed businesses, all to defeat an invisible enemy? Well, the next enemy will be climate change, or your privacy, or censorship. And if RCR can't find the funding to get back on air and be the voice that holds our government to account, who will speak?
They think pretty fucking highly of them. So I guess if you're going to reach for the stars, we'll keep going.
Speak up for you. What media outlet will fight back on your behalf? Will you trust the legacy media to hold our government to account? Who is going to cover what is really going on in the world? Who will be your voice?
The issue I'm most worried about is censorship. I just want to live in a free and democratic society in which we're all able to speak our minds.
N-word on Call of Duty.
No, but this is what you find, and we talked about this just a few minutes ago, is that we're talking about this in a clip we did last night. It's going to come out tomorrow night about Brook van Velden, about how the right scare people into things. You know, I can't go to rugby anymore. It's not safe to go to rugby. Like that dude just said, I want to be able to speak my mind freely. Who can't do that? Who can't do that? Has anyone in New Zealand ever been stopped for speaking their mind freely? You know, this is the thing. There's this narrative that they've painted that everyone's bound up into this tight little ball that they're not allowed to do anything. And only groups like this and the platform can free those people where they're not bound up at all. You can say what you want when you want.
I love it. People on the whole ass platforms that they've created saying that they're being censored is hilarious to me.
Yeah. All right, there's a few more clips from here. Let's just go. This is some of the viewers' comments now as to what they deem important and what they're scared of.
The issues that I see right now are the CBDCs, the digital identity, and I see the freedom of choice, especially in medical.
Medical freedom, that's a biggie for me. Once they've taken that away from us, they have control over just about everything we do in our life.
15-minute cities. I'm concerned about gender ideology, indoctrination of our children and our schools and our homes.
If you want to see where New Zealand is going, just look at China today. Social credit system, 15-minute cities, like it's,
they're being serious.
Digital currency.
No, they're being serious. This is what the fear is.
I think the biggest issue is loss of sovereignty. I think a lot of people are really unaware of what's happening globally in terms of the WEF and the influence that they may have.
Most people in New Zealand have no idea of what's going on in Europe at the moment. You've got millions of farmers basically being told to stop growing food. Our farmers here are the same. They're being driven.
That word basically, that's carrying a lot of water. A lot of water, basically being told. That carries a lot of water.
To a point where they can no longer provide food for us.
I think we all have a right to have this freedom of speech where we can actually say how we feel. We don't have to agree.
As you say, Chewy, while she's on a video on a platform saying what she wants to say, how she says.
I do not think it's healthy to agree with everything. We have to have diversity. And I think if we don't have that, then we've lost freedom.
So that's just that's all I was going to show. It goes on and on and on. And honestly, it's they hit every single conspiracy theory. It's WEF. It's 15-minute cities. It's they might have well said the sign of the beast, the mark of the beast. But they're not gonna come back. They're not going to come back because they're not going to be able to fundraise $85,000 per week to keep them on. So they're gone. Now, I was going to say as well, this is not us gloating, but since we've started, we've seen off Today FM and we've seen off RCR. Anything else that you know that we've seen off, Chewy, and we're still going? Because I did a tweet today that's a sad one. I did a tweet today based on RCR, said that basically that's one down, one to go. People can read into that what they want, but there you go. One down, one to go. And look, it's probably also to do with they've misplayed their hand. They were riding this COVID grift to probably 12 months after it finished, and it's a bit like Chantel Baker, who had all that influence around COVID, and then once COVID disappeared, all of a sudden her 100,000 Facebook followers and stuff all sort of faded, and then she got taken off that, and then a lot of her, what is she doing now? Like, I'm not looking for a fight with her in particular, but it's like there was a moment where people, struck gold for their conspiracy theorists, and that's all gone. And these guys thought that would keep on rolling, and it hasn't. And then when you got to get your listener or your viewer up against somewhere like the platform, and let's be honest, up against somewhere like News Talk ZB or the Herald or these other places that are doing it, there's not the room for all of them, and some of them are going to start falling, and this is the first.
I just love that whole thing of like people going, I need something a bit more hardcore than News Talk ZB. Is fucking frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, can I just say as well, when people freak out about 15-minute cities, I find that intensely amusing.
Yeah.
Because they're equating 15-minute cities as in you can't travel more than 15 minutes away from your house, rather than just making it more livable to only have to travel 15 minutes from your house, which sounds fucking amazing.
I think there's going to be big borders about 7 minutes north of Dunedin and 7 minutes south of Dunedin, and and there'll be guns on the people or guns. For people who don't know, let's just make this clear. It's so that every amenity is within 15 minutes of where you live. That's a 15-minute city. Like, that sounds so terrible. Why? Because, as Chewy just said, they think it's like forcing us to, isolate in this area and not be allowed to move. It's not. It's like it's making them more livable. Let's all have somewhere to get our food from within 15 minutes of where we live. Our sports fields, our central post office. That would be a fantastic goal. Why not?
Yeah.
Anyway.
But because the UN's mentioned it, then the lizards are involved. Just crazy banana stuff. But yeah, I'm glad they're gone, and long may it continue.
Speaking of the UN, super quick, I haven't prepped for this, but I saw it tonight. Did you see old Winston Peters speaking at the UN?
I did.
Pretty impressive on some level.
Now this is my thing with Winston, right? Every time he has been foreign minister, he has been statesman-like, and he course corrects into a kind of more sensible position. His speech was excellent. The points that he was making were really, really good. It's when he comes back and he goes into domestic culture war stuff, I wish he'd uppercut himself to sleep every night.
Yeah.
But he's right on this. We were really critical to start with over, remember the funding being pulled from UNRWA?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, fuck it, Winston's done that. And then you actually heard what he said, and he's like, well, no, we're taking a pause. Our donation isn't until June. We just want to, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of fair enough.
For people who don't know, Winston said very clearly, as you would expect him to, that they denounce Hamas and their actions. But then he went into basically saying, and what Israel's doing right now, starving people out, is completely unacceptable. He had a crack at the big wigs who can use their vetoes, blaming them for using their vetoes. And to be honest with you, there is so much in the news tonight. I didn't have time to get it. There's also another story in the news about the government finally figuring out. You ever seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and the child catcher? My kids used to be scared of the child catcher. That's basically what this government's going to do to truants from now on. We're not covering that tonight. We might cover that tomorrow night because there's just all this other stuff to do. But, you know, I think what you see in Winston Peters is he can switch into politician mode. He can also switch into old man shouts at clouds mode, but it seems when he's, as you're saying, Chewy, on the international stage, he pretty much switches into politicians mode, and it's probably very different from having someone else. God, I mean, is he going to stay it when he's no longer deputy? I assume so, but whoever else, imagine David Seymour in that role or someone else, what they'd be doing over at the UN. Who knows? God, let's just not. So yeah,
I mean, the
credit where credit's due.
The comments he made about the Security Council, I 100% support. Like the vetoes have got to go. It's just shown that this has shown just how paralyzing those vetoes are and how out of step with their original purpose they are. They've got to go.
Yep. All right. Last story of tonight, Chewy, actually is one from Sunday morning, and you weren't here with me at the start of the show. You know me in general. I don't really push back. I don't like to start fights, but I do like to speak honestly. And if you will read the promo, what do you call them? The show notes for this. The show notes at the start of, like in the write-up for this on YouTube says this. Let me read it to you. Brooke van Velden probably needs to listen to some wise advice. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. Which is pretty much what happened in the weekend. I am in shock at the level of stupidity she showed. In shock. Didn't understand questions. Didn't get what Jack Tame was saying. When Jack Tame had to explain something to her, she said, "Thank you for explaining that to me," or words to that effect. Shocking. I'm going to show that, and I've already said, see all the crosses out there, those crossing outs. There's so much in this. This could be an hour show just by itself. So I've actually had to cross out things that are quite important. We just don't have the time. We just don't. So this is what we're going to start with. And this first thing isn't really even. I realize what I've just said. There'll be a person or two out there that think that I'm being a prick. So I want to show you an example of what I'm talking about, okay? And this is this is an example of just her not even understanding the question. So they're setting up for a to and fro between her and Jack asks her a question about, I'll just play it. I might have the wrong one mixed up, but she doesn't understand the question. Have a look.
But we can't just stop everything every time we hear that there might be a potential red flag. Absolutely, we have to look at the evidence. It's a very developing situation, but we're only just receiving it. So I can't comment further on what we will do, but I want the time to actually get it right.
How long do you think that process will take?
Right, really important. So she's talking about to do with what are their policies. And Jack's just asked, how long do you think that will take? So he's asking, how long will it take for your policy to be enacted? That's the question, yeah?
What do you think that process will take? Just roughly. Any idea?
You're going to have to give me the time, Jack.
No. Just is it likely to be?
She thought he was doing that whole, have you got the research? Do you know what the time frame is? Meaning, it's like saying, do you know how many? She thought he was basically saying a version of how much is a bottle of milk.
We will do, but I want the time to actually get it right.
How long do you think that process will take? Just roughly. Any idea?
You're going to have to give me the time, Jack.
No. Just is it likely to be weeks or months or any sense of things?
I'll be working through it. Like I said, it's just arrived on my desk.
Idea.
I don't know what the options and the advice.
She had no idea what he was talking about. She had no idea of the question whatsoever. And that came off the back of some questions where he was asking about workplace safety inspectors, and he was saying, how many per 100,000 do we have? And she said, we don't have those numbers to hand. And he told her, and that was actually okay, because you're not going to know everything. And so when he said, how long will that take? She thought it was the same kind of question, that there was an actual number. And so she said, well, you'll have to give me the time, meaning you obviously know I don't. And this is this minister we've got in our government, Chewy, who doesn't even understand the questions she's being asked.
I'm going on a show with potentially one of New Zealand's best interviewers. I think I might do some research about the thing that I'm on there to talk about. Maybe.
I think what I've realised with Brooke van Velden is she's across her portfolios. But as soon as she gets asked about a different portfolio or a different general government question, she loses it. Like she was being asked then about, it was yesterday, being asked about migration, which is obviously Erica Stanford. And she was she didn't have a salient answer. She couldn't answer it. And I did a clip today. People can, is it uploaded yet? Maybe, that says Chloe Swarbrick knows national policies better than Brook van Velden, because Chloe knew it and Chloe went for it and Brook didn't. And it's like as soon as she's one step removed from her immediate responsibilities, she doesn't seem to be able to function. Here's another one, and this is talking about 90-day trials. Jack Tame asked 3 times for evidence of the 90-day trials, and once again, she doesn't understand the question that Jack Tame is asking about the research. Jack Tame asks about the research that came out when the last government did this. And she goes, oh, well, we've only been doing it since December. I mean, I haven't had a chance to read that yet. And he goes, no, the last time this was in. Honestly, it's train wreck, and I'm only giving you, if this was a literal train wreck, I've left a gap this wide open in the car for you to see as you drive past it quickly. The rest of the train wreck in the interview, we haven't got time to look at. This is just a slice as you drive past it at 100 kilometres an hour, the train wreck over on the thing. Here's the next bit, 90-day trials.
Healthy.
You're extending 90-day trials. You said it makes it more likely a firm will take a punt on hiring a worker. What evidence do you have that the 90-day trial period...
Can I just say, Ministers of the Crown, if you're not prepared yet for this question, the what evidence question, then you shouldn't be doing this, because Jack Tame does this to everyone.
Increase firms' overall hiring.
Well, it's part of building back business confidence. We heard that businesses want this government to be a government of action and to back them.
Heard a question,
so what evidence do you have that they
Well,
work?
the evidence that I had did come through MB. The only perceived threat of the policy was a perception
Haven't
of
had an answer yet,
people
by the way.
that it would make their work arrangements more precarious.
No,
that was
my question was my
actual
question was what
threat.
evidence do you have that it works?
Well, I know from talking to people up and down New Zealand, just this week, I had someone phone me up and he said, my business can't wait to use this.
So just anecdotal evidence.
Anecdotal evidence, but also we have a very, very strong consultation period through the election where so many businesses said this is what we want.
But that's anecdotal. So last time it was in effect, of course, Treasury commissioned a study on the policy. Did you read that?
I did, but this has been since December that we've made this policy.
Yeah, right. So but Treasury
about.
commissioned a study on the policy when it was last in place under the previous national government.
Mm-hmm.
Treasury said, quote, "We find no evidence that the ability to use trial periods significantly increases firms' overall hiring. We estimate the policy effect to be as statistically and economically insignificant." What did the study miss?
Well, I think it missed the fact that businesses want us to build back their confidence.
But this is an evidence-based study. They've actually looked at the numbers as opposed to just getting vibes from businesses.
Yeah, but what I'd say, if you look at the...
Did you get that, Chewy? I think Jack's been watching.
Vibes.
You see what he said? I think he's been watching.
Us to build back their confidence.
But this is an evidence-based study. They've actually looked at the numbers as opposed to just getting vibes from businesses.
Yeah, but what I'd say, if you look at those numbers, is yes, a lot of people do use 90-day trials, but it doesn't mean that they actually fire people, This gives them the confidence to take on
If you look at the,
somebody.
we find no evidence that the ability to use trial periods significantly increases firms' overall hiring. That as a bottom line suggests that the policy doesn't do what you say it will.
Well, I think it will.
Boom. That's your evidence.
Jack,
I think it will.
Stop, Jack. She's already dead.
But did you hear what she just... This is the thing. This is what she said. I think it will. I think it will. Vote National 2027. I think it will.
I think it will have evidence.
This is from a study commissioned by Treasury from when it was last in place.
Well, if you
Watch
look at
Jack's
what this
face.
government wants to do, we want to build back business confidence. Businesses told us before the election that there were a few policies that they wanted us to work on, getting rid of the fair pay agreements, making sure that we were reinstating 90-day trials for all businesses, and also making sure that we are changing those very small compliance issues that businesses face every day. Things like the Holidays Act, which we are also doing to make sure that any business and worker knows what their obligations and rights are and are getting paid in accordance with the law. When it comes to 90-day trials, they already existed under Labour with small businesses. If it was right for the small businesses, I see no need why big businesses were carved out of it. If it worked for them, it works for everyone.
One last question.
So if you haven't seen this before, do you now see what I'm saying about I mean, I watched Jack Tame's face.
There, Pat.
Yeah, I know. And this is one small snippet of a 31-minute interview. You know, they say time flies when you're having fun. I watched it and it felt like 7 years in Tibet. She just doesn't get it. I mean, look, this is not slam Brooke van Velden week, but we said this last night. She is beyond her depth. She is out beyond her depth. She's out of her depth. She's beyond her skill set. This is when you get it. Okay, would you like an inexperienced brain surgeon? Probably not. Would you like an inexperienced pilot? Yeah, probably not. How about an inexperienced MP who is now a minister who is going to affect changes in part of a coalition government for the rest of time in this country? Probably not.
There's so much to take out of it. Like, we want to build back business confidence. Every time there's a business confidence survey, I can tell you how it's going to go. If National are in power, whether they're doing good or not, business confidence goes up. When Labor's in, and they're trying to look after the workers, whether they're successful or not, business confidence goes down. It's so fucking predictable, and it's based on nothing.
Yeah.
Business confidence is not based on any other metric other than how do you feel about the government right now. It's ridiculous that this is a metric for coming up with a policy. And then you've got things like people have told me. I had a phone call.
Yeah.
Businesses told us that they want this thing. Well, have people told you that they want fair pay? Have people told you that they're struggling to pay their mortgages and feed their kids?
Have people told you that they want to get rid of smoke-free 2025? What about that one?
It's if it wasn't so goddamn infuriating, it'd be laughable.
Yeah. I actually give Jack some credit here. I really do sense that at times the smirk on his face was visible. And I don't think he was being a dick. I think that some of the stuff coming out of her mouth, remember I said this last night, this is not slam Brook van Velden week, but she comes across as someone who is a teenager playing the role of, even the way she speaks. It's almost, and she's affected a particular way of speaking, where if you were doing the secondary school play, I would be the politician. And this is
she does
how
speak
I
like
would
a
do.
teacher.
And this is what I need. And then she flipped from there into 50s housewife. It's infuriating. And the thing is, at the moment, it is kind of dangerous. People make laws, people make changes, and you've already said it once, Chewy. I don't want to criticize Jack at all because I can just see the number of times. Like there was one point where he asked a question 3 times and he just had to move on. But what wasn't said and what needs to be said to her is, which businesses have you been talking to that want 90-day trials? Because it might be interesting to see who has been tugging on the ear of ACT and who hasn't been. Like which ones are the ones wanting to get rid of fair pay agreements and bring back 90? Who are those businesses? Because when you say I've been talking to businesses, what would there be? 10,000 businesses in New Zealand? You've spoken to 4? Like what 100? Who have you spoken to?
Let's talk about 90-day trials, right? Because there she said that if it works for small businesses, then there's no reason why it shouldn't be extended to bigger businesses. Like that shows just a foundational lack of understanding about the challenges that small business has compared to a larger business, right? Like if you are a sole owner operator with one location and you have 4 staff and you hire someone and maybe you didn't do a fantastic job screening them or whatever, or maybe you just employed a dud. Like that's, you got 4 staff on the floor. That's like a quarter of your workforce is not pulling its weight. And I do not like 90-day terms at all for anybody, but I can see the benefit. there.
Yeah.
I can see that there is a situational thing of like, well, we tried, it didn't work out. This guy's got to go. And there's got to be a pathway to make that acceptable. If you're a business that has 150, 200 employees, employing a dud and having to manage that person out of the business is very doable. It's just you need to make sure you're ticking the boxes so that you don't exploit someone. So you don't weaponize a thing of like, well, fuck, I only needed someone to get me through the busy period and now I don't want to keep them on. So I'm going to out the door. I don't have to tell you shit. I don't have to make sure that I did this, that, and the other thing. You're gone, boy. You know? And as with anything, the power in this is overwhelmingly with the employer. And of course, business doesn't like that. They want to be in the more powerful position. You know, things like I can't believe she said business doesn't want fair pay agreements. What a sentence. What a sentence to say out loud. Of course they don't. You know, they don't want increases to minimum wage. They don't want more holidays. They don't want anything that means that they're doing more for the worker.
They're not hiding today. They're not hiding who they're fighting for. They're not hiding. It's just, I mean,
for a party that is so anti-unions, what they don't realize is when there is a government in power that is pro-worker and making sure that these protections are in sight, unions aren't needed as much, and their membership tends to go down. And then when these guys go in and they're like, we're going after the worker, union membership goes up because they know, oh fuck, the government doesn't have our back. Holy shit, we need something to redress the balance.
All right, let's do the last part about this. And we actually read a bit of a transcript of this last night from a particular quote-unquote left writer. And this is, and I just ask you to watch Jack's face again with these questions, because when you ask someone a question that you know they're going to either have to basically say all of our policies make no sense or lie, then they choose lie. I think you can see that on Jack's face. Have a watch of this.
Are you still the only MP with an economics degree? Or is there another one? I haven't gone through the qualifications of every single new MP. Is there anyone else?
We have no. I'm not sure cross Parliament.
Yeah.
This is called set 'em up and knock 'em down. This is what this is.
I know that with an ACT, we've managed to bring in Andrew
Look at the eyes.
Hogarth,
He's like, I've got it.
and he has an economics degree as well. So we are doubling the efforts with an ACT.
Okay. With that in mind, with your economics qualifications in mind, our income tax cuts right now in the best interests of lowering inflation?
I think they are. I think they are for all of those New Zealanders who have really, really, really been struggling. If you look at this from a wider context, we know that businesses have suffered. There's been high inflation, absolutely. But if you think of every New Zealander when they're going out of their house for work every day, they are finding it harder and harder to actually make ends meet. So
how does giving them more money lower inflation?
So giving them a little bit more money in their own back pockets makes it easier to keep up with that rising cost of living.
Yes, but that doesn't. My question is, how does that lower inflation?
Well, lowering inflation, actually, that's the role of government overall.
Let's go back to my question. Our income tax cuts right now in the best interest of lowering inflation was my question.
I think you can have both. You can have the government pare back.
My question is it in the best interests of lowering inflation?
It is. We can have Kiwis who are working really hard have a few more dollars in their own back pockets for getting up and going to work every week to provide for their families, while as a whole government, we cut back on resourcing and we cut back on government spending, because that has a huge inflationary effect. So you don't have to cut back everything. I take that, but you can have a balance, and we're rebalancing away from huge government spending and allowing more New Zealanders to have more of their own money.
Brooke van Velden.
So what she basically said is, you'll get $2 more a week in your packet, and for that we're going to cut this massive amount of public spending and stuff. But you get $2, but now you're going to have to spend $20 a week on buses for your kids. So we're going to cut that funding to the public transport, but we're going to give you $2 back. So. Yeah. So there you go, Chewy. There's the conversation we read about last night to do with the inflation question.
That is such an easy get. Yes, tax cuts are inflationary. That's you can sort of go, yes, they're inflationary. They're worth the risk. There's things that you can do, but adding more money to the economy is generally inflationary.
Yeah, more money.
I don't have an economics degree, but that's fucking how that works.
Don't talk yourself down. You definitely have an economics disease, Chewy, without question. Without question, you have an economics disease. Hey guys, it's been fun tonight. Thanks for that. Let's get through some of these. We haven't done any one tonight, and I do apologize. There's quite a few there. Ian will read this in 6 minutes because he was 6 minutes late. Rewinded. Ergo, I'm in a time warp. I jumped to the left, then a step to the right. No, step to the right. Rocky Horror, in case anyone's wondering what that was. Rocky Horror Picture Show. So see you in 6 minutes. Ian, thank you for the $5 super chat. Citizen Gold, the media isn't biased towards the left. It's biased towards a fact-based reality. Well, some are. It's not the media's fault that the right are not fans of facts. Yeah. Look, I think the other thing is, and you've heard it. Jack Tame's a really good example. One week he'll get criticised as a, lover of Dr. Fauci because of how he spoke to Winston Peters, and the next week he'll get called a right-wing mouthpiece because of how he spoke to Chris Hipkins. It's like that's I remember the conversations we used to have at ZB. It was like, if both sides are criticising you, you're either doing everything wrong or something right. Someone's paid your late fee on your behalf, Chewy. That's nice, eh? Xantra?
Oh,
paid the late fee on your behalf. And speaking of where we get our news from, thank you for the $5 super chat. $2 super chat from Peter says, I've gone back to using an RSS reader. Oh, interesting. It's interesting now that there's also lots of websites being set up to actually go through and actually kind of rank and rate the news and give you news based on the words within it rather than just the headlines. And that's starting to happen more and more and more. McDonald says, no message, don't do Patreon, just think you're worth supporting and hoping this money actually goes to you guys. Oh, sweet, thank you. I appreciate your $17, very generous of you. Paul, the other one says their online follower numbers across social platforms are too low to make their claims believable. This is talking about RCR, I guess, so there you go. BRB, Burb, Kiwi Burb, $5 super chat. Thank you, sir or madam, or in between. We need our own saying on the left. How about pick on folk, go broke? Pick on folk, go right.
That's pretty good.
Right wing nutters turn to butters. I don't know. We'll work on it. We'll
take that back to the marketing team, eh?
All right. $5 super chat from Peter says they're like Al Bundy and his high school touchdowns. When did that come in? That came in at 47, so we're talking about RCR then, like Al Bundy and their high school touchdowns. Because I care, for $5, thank you, we only have the current triumvirate to outlast, and as long as we have BHN, we will survive. I love my new BHN hoodie too. Oh, cool. Thanks. I'm glad you
aren't they
it.
Good?
Yeah.
I love it when they're new. They're all fluffy. It's good.
Xantra is back again. $5 super chat. Think of it. It's so hard to know if Winnie is grifting or being serious when he's back at home being crazy old man yells at cloud. I actually think he's more grifting. I think probably what you see of him in front of the UN feels to me. I don't know Chewy. I don't know Winnie, but I have interviewed him since the 90s, quite literally since the 90s. And I think his natural predisposition is to statesman-like. He's got a bit older and he's got a bit slower and he's got a bit creakier, but I think what you hear mostly in New Zealand is playing to a base that got him elected. Chewy?
Yeah, I think with Winston there's a huge element of performance.
Yeah.
With him. It's worked for him for decades, so why should he turn away from that? But then doing that in the Grand Hall of the UN,
yeah,
it's not gonna work at all. You know,
he's also a very proud man. I'm not saying that as a compliment, and I imagine he wouldn't want to be looked foolish in front of all those people. So, I don't know. Maybe it's an act, maybe it's not. But I think on the world stage, he hasn't shown up the country to be run by cookers, and we got to give him a thumbs up for that. JMK says missed yesterday night. Congrats, congrats, Pat, on the love mahi. Running out of interesting things to say about this lot. Brooks the Clown from JMK Hanlon for $10. Thank you. And finally, here's a good one. Brook van Vibes. Remember that? Brook van Vibes? I've seen Babbling Brook in the chat a few times as well.
Of vibes. Jesus.
Yeah. He's been watching. I'm sure he's been watching. He just can't give us credit because, because what happens, unfortunately, is then people accuse us of being like left party simps and connecting behind the scenes and sharing our talking points. So he'll never say, but I'm sure he's been watching. That'll be it, Chewy.
Do you know what I want Brooke to do? I think Brooke should get into reading, audiobooks.
Oh yeah,
like she's got a very pleasant voice. It's just the nonsense that she says is she does sound like an AI voice though.
Right.
Like her cadence is a bit off.
Right.
Well, you've done a switch or a change. No.
If the audio podcast people who are listening don't know what that was, 1 minute and 15 seconds in, go to YouTube and find out what we just did. You're not going to tell you. All right, sir, you got in late today. Anything else you want to share before we head off for the night?
Oh, look, I don't want to kick off the lid of this so late in the show, but I would love tomorrow to have a crack at Luxon's comments about making us into Estonia because...
Oh, it's so good. Please, I'll go with that. Yes, I'm with you.
Look, I'll just set this up a little bit. I think this government is actually pretty good at identifying problems. Where they go wrong is in their solutions for these.
Yeah.
And I think comparing us to Estonia is that headline provokes a reaction. He's almost there, though. He's almost there. We often compare ourselves to the wrong countries.
So a tweet from Clint this evening. If we want New Zealand to be like Estonia, it has free tertiary, free GP visits, free public transport, etc. Paid for by a 39% tax wedge. New Zealand's is 20%, including a 33% social security pay rate. So it also has 82% home ownership, a legacy of distribution of homes post USSR. Okay,
Absolutely. You can't
I'll vote for that, Mr. Luxon. I'll vote for that, Mr. Luxon. Well, credit where credit's due. Well done.
And remove them from their context.
Yeah.
I have always said, like, if we want to compare ourselves to upwardly mobile small countries, there's no point in us looking at the US. There's no point in us looking at Britain. There's no point in us looking at Australia for a lot of things. But the Scandi Balkan countries, yes, they are at the top of the metrics. But they only they cherry pick it. They cherry pick it so hard. They never look at the tax rate. And they never see what they can buy with that tax rate.
Yep. So we say that we will give credit where credit's due to the right. Congratulations, Mr. Luxon. We are on board. We support you 100% in wanting to make New Zealand like Estonia. Vote for that. Would you vote for that, Chewy?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There you go.
Not in the way that he thinks.
Well, but we're just saying.
But that's a little tease for tomorrow. We'll get into this more fully tomorrow, unless something absolutely insane happens tomorrow.
Frosty's just joined us, obviously. I was late, so I was unsure whether you covered this, but if I could make a request for tomorrow, Winston's speech at the UN, we did cover it a little bit tonight, Frosty, but there's just so much going on. So, like tomorrow, we didn't cover what we didn't cover tonight. We should do a segment at the end of each show. What we didn't cover tonight will be on tomorrow. The Estonia thing, what's going to happen to keep kids at school thing, the old Winnie over at the UN. There's just lots in the news at the moment. And as much as we would love to be here for 4 hours each night, we're going to try and stick to our 90-minute hours for the next wee while. All right. That's us, team. You're all beautiful. We love you to bits. Community, village. One of the messages tonight, I don't know who it was because it's gone too fast, was talking about we are a little village, and the person who wrote it said, and I'm the village idiot, which I thought was quite funny. That's very nice. You can't have that title. Chewy wants it. I'm just saying. Best before we go, because we like to give credit, just wanting to let your listeners know Harm Reduction Coalition Aotearoa is launching on May 7th. What is that? You know what that is, Chewy?
No, because this is new information to us.
All right.
But I think Alex was talking about if we wanted to speak to them on the show at some point. And I think, yeah, sounds
Email
interesting.
us, bighearynews@gmail.com. All right, whānau, we'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Love you to bits. Be safe, be well. Come back tomorrow night, bring a friend. Hooroo.